It's the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast with your hosts, the Wolf and Action Jackson, who are keeping rock alive by talking classic rock, hard rock, progressive rock, heavy metal, 80s music, early MTV, UK vs. US chart success, and much more. This is the home of classic album and live concert reviews and your place for interviews with artists and legends. You're rocking with the Wolf. Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to episode number 211 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast. Brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf, and I will be joined, as always, by my partner in crime from the East Coast of the United States, Mr. Gary Action Jackson. And we appreciate all those who tuned in recently to our show last week on second albums, which can be tricky. Sometimes they take you to the next level, sometimes they never recapture the glory of your first album. And we actually gave you some lists of 5 that we loved and 3 that we hated because they're just overplayed or they're by bands we just don't like and they were overplayed and for some reason they were popular even though no one sought our permission to make them popular. And it'll spark a little controversy in your life to listen to those, so I hope you check that one out. But this week we wanted to react to some breaking news that Nicko McBrain, the longtime drummer of Iron Maiden, is stepping down from touring after 42 years with the band. Of course, Jackson and I went to see them last summer in Europe, in Amsterdam, and in Antwerp, and we noticed that Nicko was maybe having a hard time at one of the gigs. Of course, it came out later that earlier in the year he had suffered a stroke, and he fought hard to get back into fighting shape and play with Iron Maiden again. Well, he's soldiered on, he's finished the Future Past tour, and right before their last show in Sao Paolo on December 7th, they let the world know, hey, Nicko is stepping down. And we're going to tell you who the next person is, but first we're going to celebrate the career of Nicko McBrain and Iron Maiden. So he had his day in the spotlight. And then right after, they announced that it would be Simon Dawson, who's been playing with Steve Harris in British Lion, Steve's side band, for the last decade or so. And he would be taking Nicko's spot. Of course, that set the socials all a rage with, yes, we can't wait to see you, Simon. Bye-bye, Nicko. Or, no, this is horrible. I don't even want to see Iron Maiden without Nicko. So, of course, we're going to have to address that here in the show. But Iron Maiden is an incredible live band, and they've been anchored for 42 years by the crazy and fun drumming of Nicko McBrain. And he's such a big personality, always has that big smile on his face, great in an interview, terrific storyteller. So he's going to be missed. And we thought we'd take this opportunity to talk a little bit about his career, what he's meant to us, the time I got to shake hands with the man, and try to think about, well, what's up? What can we expect from Simon Dawson in the coming years? But before we get into that, we do have a little bit of business to take care of. We always like to mention we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a family of over 100 shows. And there's an opportunity to invest in Pantheon and the future of podcasting. You can learn more at pantheonpodcast.com or on socials at PantheonPods. And as it's the holidays, folks, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't go visit our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, who is based in the UK, but they ship all around the world. And trust me, they have an amazing array of Iron Maiden stuff, whether it's picture discs, imports, posters, rarities, whatever you're looking for, go to rarevinyl.com. Go find the stuff that you love. Then use the code UGLY at checkout and you save 10%. Now, it's a one-time code, but you can use it on one entire order. So you can get the picture disc you always wanted, the import you always wanted, the mint condition first print that you always wanted, the old poster that you always wanted, the tour program that you always wanted. Buy them all and save 10% off all of them with the code UGLY. With Christmas approaching, it's getting pretty down to the wire here as far as shipments around the world. Folks in the UK, you still got a chance. So go to rarevinyl.com, use the code UGLY, save 10%. Your record collection will thank you. Now back to Nicko McBrain. We had to have seen this coming. He's in his 70s. He's in a heavy metal band. He had a stroke last year that he had to battle back from. They're wrapping up this Days of Future Past tour, which was amazing. I think it's just a good opportunity for him to kind of bow out. They say he'll still be active, which means there's still a chance for him to do new music, new records with the boys. But Simon Dawson is going to be taking his place behind the drum kit on live shows going forward. And because Jackson and I will be visiting Europe next summer to see Iron Maiden, we'll be giving you a report next summer on how Simon is handling it all. But for now, let's jump into our tribute to Nicko McBrain as he retires from Iron Maiden here on The Wolf. So we got some big news just in the last couple of days here, Jackson, from our boys in Iron Maiden, who we partied with Hardy in Antwerp last summer, that Nicko McBrain, the octopus, the man who's been in the band for 42 years, is retiring. He's stepping down from touring with Iron Maiden. Left open the door that if they're going to make new music, he's available to do it. Mm-hmm. But that this is it. And though now we knew who the new replacement will be that day on the 7th, it's like tonight's going to be the last night. We didn't know that. How did that news, how did you find out, first of all, and how did it hit you?
You texted me and I said, I got on there. And then, once I got onto Twitter or X or whatever it is, it was all over the place on my feed. And it's one of those things. I guess I knew it was coming, especially after the news surfaced that he'd been sick last year and actually had a stroke and came back from that. And I enjoyed watching him play. I'm really glad I got a chance to see him play live. But end of an era. I was, like I said, I knew it was coming. I just didn't want it to.
I'm with you. And after we'd heard that he'd had the stroke last year, and of course, we had Uncle Steve from Uncle Steve's Iron Maiden Zone kind of interview us about our sojourn to Europe to see Maiden, first time for you, and talk about the shows. And he said that in his little world, he said some people had been reporting that Nicko had been a little off. And I said on our episode that though I did not hear anything, I saw in the Amsterdam show that Harry was back there with his back to the audience, which you never see for more than a couple seconds. Like he's helping Nicko, like making sure he knows what is going on and what the changes are. And Nicko didn't have that usual great big Nicko smile on his face. He was working. He was trying hard to keep up. I'm like, maybe he is getting a little old because he's older than Harry. He's older than Bruce. Mm-hmm. He's 72 years old now. At the time, he was probably about 71. It is not unusual for a 72-year-old of any profession to retire, but for a drummer, for a band of not only Iron Maiden stature, but their live performance and touring schedule, it's kind of amazing that he lasted this far, stroke or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he does have the most physically demanding job. I know you could probably say, well, the vocalist, because, you have to take care of your voice. You never know how that's going to go. But as far as, actually having to do physical work, he's got the hardest job. And let's face it, that's not easy drumming. He's not in the pocket back there.
No, he's not Charlie Watts. You can play Charlie Watts' bits till you're 90, man. That's not hard. Playing in Iron Maiden, that's a workout, man. That's an actual job. Mm-hmm. And so it's a surprise, but not a shock is the way I would put it.
Same. Yeah. So, like I said, you knew this was coming. And just when it came out, you're like, it makes sense. It was the last show of the Future Past tour in Brazil where they are just adored. I saw a clip of Bruce announcing it and the crowd just flipped out and just, was super, Nicko, and he's out there, waving, stands up, gives everybody just a fantastic send off. But yeah, you knew it was coming.
Yeah. And, when we saw him back to back at Amsterdam and Antwerp, was that in front of a total of 35,000 people over 2 nights? I'd say it's probably less than 40.
Yeah.
It was 90,000 over 2 days in Sao Paolo,
And 90,000 maniacs too.
Just people losing their minds, crazy down there, so I get it. And once you get over that, you're like, okay, it's not going to be the end of Iron Maiden. If Harry still draws breath, Iron Maiden will continue. And some people, namely you and me, have tickets to see them next year in Europe. So they're obviously going to honor their dates. Iron Maiden would never cancel dates. Mm-hmm. And I figure, well, as soon as they knew he had the stroke, they must have had somebody ready to go.
Right. Yeah. There's no way they wouldn't plan for something like that. This is too big of an operation.
Yeah. It's too big of a risk.
Yeah. Correct. To not have somebody. And I know people were throwing out it, of course, it's Mike Portnoy. Or okay, stop.
He can't do everything.
Yeah.
He just got back with Dream Theater. People have been begging for that for over a decade. Okay, it happens. Be happy about that. Okay, but then, the speculation starts, well, who's it going to be? Because it can't be just anybody. And I speculated it would be somebody English. It would be somebody near their age group. Maybe not exactly in their age group, but someone relatively close. He might be the youngest person in the band, but you could still be in your 60s and pull that off.
Right.
And it'd be somebody we didn't really know. And it turns out all three of those things were right.
Yeah. And when they announced it, it was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And the answer is Simon Dawson.
And he's from where?
Well, he knew Harry because he's been the drummer in British Lion for the last decade or so.
He's already been through the gauntlet. They play together. That's the rhythm section. So if Harris is going to pick up somebody, it's got to be somebody he trusts implicitly on the kid.
I bet if you were huge Maiden fans, bigger than us, and you follow British Lion closely, then you knew that was probably going to be the case.
Right.
Especially if you'd seen them play together and see how well he meshes with Harry.
And you got to figure, I don't know how close the British Lion and the Iron Maiden worlds get to each other, but you figure that all the guys in the band must know him at this point in time after 10 years of being there, have a comfort level. So it's almost, I don't know how familiar he is with the Maiden catalog, but it's a plug and play deal.
Well, he's definitely going to have to practice some of these, and they're going back to play some stuff that the band hasn't even played in a while. And essentially for the last time is what they're saying about some of these. Like, we're going to play these because we know you love them because they're really old. And then
don't ask me again.
They're going away. Like, that's it. So I'm like, all right, well, it's going to have someone who has those chops. And I guess those who would know British Lion would have guessed that it would have been Simon, but he's not known to the world. Like you said, he's not Mike Portnoy. He's not this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame drummer. He's solid. Obviously he must be, or Harry wouldn't have put him in British Lion in the first place.
Right. Yeah. I think first and foremost, he realizes that the show comes first. And so, yeah, he's going to surround himself with solid musicians.
And apparently he even has a little bit of new wave of British heavy metal credential in that he was in a band called Deep Switch in the 80s and released an album in 1986 called 9 Inches of God.
All right.
Sounds like something Gene Simmons would put out. That's according to ultimateclassicrock.com, because everybody's curious now. It's like, okay, you've not only got this great drummer, but quite a character in Nicko to replace. Mm-hmm. People are going to want to know about this guy. And I feel like he had like 300 followers on Twitter. Like when this all started, when it got announced, I think he's already starting to jump up there.
I know I followed him as soon as that news came. As soon as I found out who he was, boop, follow. I want to see what's going on with him.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know. Yeah, it has. You and I are some of the only ones, it would seem, because and I still don't think he's made a post in, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. Maybe he's more on the gram than he is on Twitter. I don't know. Could be.
Wasn't he was in another band, wasn't he, for a while? Some band you may have heard of, had some 80s fame.
Well, here's the thing. I may have seen him play with the Outfield.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So again, also in this Ultimate Classic Rock, he was in a big pop band for 20 years. He didn't play on their big hits like in the early to mid 80s, but he joined in 1989 after Alan Jackman left the band. Okay. And then they made an album called Diamond Days. And then they made some more albums throughout the 90s, and he played on all of those. So he wasn't on like Your Love or, Josie's on a, Vacation, all those. But he played with them for a couple decades. I once saw the Outfield at like a Wednesday by the river. The local radio station is putting on like an 80s thing or something like that. And the Outfield were there. I'm like, you know what? I love the Outfield. I'm going to admit it. I love those songs, and it's free. And we're going down there to see the Outfield play. I don't remember the drumming being good or bad or indifferent, just that the songs sounded great to me. And not the lead singer, but the other guy, who I think is their bass player, or, their guitar player, whoever he is, was like, you need to tell the radio stations they need to play the songs you love, Because, I feel like at that point, rock and roll was in a pretty downward spiral as far as the industry was concerned. Nobody was wanting to sign rock bands. Nobody wanted to nurture them. It would be so much easier to just go get a pretty girl, teach her some dance steps, and push her out on the road, and get her some slutty hot videos that they're going to play, catchy beats, no soul, all just like porn, basically. It's what pop music is. And so, yeah, I get it. They're like, there's still a lot of rock fans out there. It's too hard a road to hoe for the industry. They're not people who love music anymore. They're people who have to hit quarterly numbers and annual numbers and get their bonuses. Music industry has abandoned rock bands because what are you supposed to do? Give them a 4 album deal, give them 7 years to develop, hope they don't become drug addicts, hope they stay together, hope you can keep the songwriters on the straight path, That's just the industry. But I think I may have actually seen him play because that was in the 2000s. If he was there from 1989 for 20 years, I think I saw him play.
That sounds about right. But here's my only apprehension with this whole deal. I saw a clip of Bruce, and this probably was in probably the late 90s, and he was doing a show, and they were playing 2 Minutes to Midnight.
Okay.
And it was not the same without Nicko. I don't know who was in the band at that point in time, but the stuff that he adds, the way that he plays those drums is a huge part of the Iron Maiden sound. So that's got to be in the discussion of like that. I don't know what flavor that is to get you to play like that, but you can't just straight drum those parts.
Well, yeah, and that's what people are apprehensive about. Mm-hmm. Of course, we've been all over social media since this came out. It's everywhere. And there's kind of a couple of big themes. One is, we love you, Nicko. And sorry to see you go, but we're going to celebrate the fact that we were with you for so long and that you're awesome. And you're this character. He's just a funny, strange guy. He's actually got the same birthday as the Wolf Cub does, though they were born about 60 years apart. and then there was a big group of folks like, I knew Simon would do it. Sorry we're gone, buddy, but the Irons, up the Irons, show must go on. And then there was a small contingent of people like, I don't like this, or this is now if not the end, the beginning of the end of Iron Maiden. And I thought that was a little harsh. It will probably be a little different, but you've still got 5/6 of the band there, all the guitar players, the voice, and of course, Steve Harris. Yes, Nicko plays an important role. He brought something to the table that Clive Burr, who was a brilliant drummer, could not.
Right.
But is it going to ruin the band live? I don't
think so. I don't think it'll ruin the band live. I think Steve Harris is smart enough to figure out, he knows the way it's supposed to sound. He's picked somebody who can not replace him, but move the band forward. I don't think anybody could replace Nicko. Like you said, he's a one-of-a-kind guy, seems like a fun guy to be around. I've never gotten the chance to hang around with him, but in everything I've ever seen, he's always in that just goofy mood of, kind of holding court wherever he goes.
Which brings me to the one lone encounter of me meeting Nicko McBrain, which I'm going to repeat.
Oh, that's right.
Right here on the show, which I know I've told before, probably 2 or 3 times. But because this is the Nicko McBrain show, I'm going to tell you about the time I shook hands with Nicko McBrain, if that's okay with everybody. So I was at the Ryder Cup at Valhalla in Louisville, Kentucky. For those of you who don't know what the Ryder Cup is, it is a golf tournament that happens every 2 years between the U.S. and Europe, basically for bragging rights, because they don't make a whole lot of money to do it. You basically just show up, you play against each other. But it's a lot more fun than the average golf match because people aren't just clapping, you're cheering wildly. Especially in America, there could be some drinks and some insults being thrown around there, but the Europeans really bring it because it was originally the U.S. versus England, like in the early 1900s, and we stomped them because we're so much bigger than they are. It's not fair. And so then they average, okay, now it'll be England and Ireland, but we continue to stop them as well. And then they make it Europe, all of Europe versus the U.S. And although I think the U.S. did well at first, now the Europe has caught up. It's more of a team atmosphere than all the out for ourselves Americans. And Europe has beaten us a lot more than we beat them. However, this time at Valhalla, we did beat them, even without Tiger Woods. And Sir Nick Faldo, who was captain of the European squad at the time, picked Nicko McBrain to be an honorary captain. And I knew this because I had seen it in Sports Illustrated. I had read about it previously. I'm like, oh man, that's cool. Nicko's going to be around. So I go to the course that one day. I think I'm on like the 6th hole or something like that, something on the front 9. And another thing that's interesting about the Ryder Cup is because the players on the same country are playing together, they're walking together and they're talking together. Whereas usually golf
team.
Yeah, exactly. Usually golf is an individual sport and they kind of keep to themselves, might say nice shot, and that's about it. But they're walking together. And then they also generally have an assistant captain or something with them, and their wives and girlfriends walk with them as well. And they always have like an outfit of the day. They might call it a uniform, but it's an outfit.
It's a kit.
Yeah, Polo has done Americas for a long time. And, they have a kind of the outfit of the day. And I'm sitting there near the green and I'm a couple people back. And all of a sudden, about 50 yards away, I hear this, ole, 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 ole. And everyone looks down and here's this guy walking the course. He's not one of the players. He's not one of the caddies because he doesn't have a bag on his back. He's wearing the kit of the day with the hat and this long blonde hair straight coming down the sides. Of course, I automatically knew who it was. So I kind of pushed my way up to the front, probably pushed some little kids out of the way, got up to the rope there, and I scream at him because no one's taking a shot. They're still walking to their balls. I go, Nicko. And he looks at me and I throw him up the irons. So he walks down, shakes my hand, hey, how you doing? You all right? I go, hey, Nicko, hey, how's it going, man? And then he walked off. And then everybody, like within 20 yards of me, looked at me and was like, okay, who was that? And who are you? Kind of thing. Of course, the she-wolf's just shaking her head like, this always happens to you. Like, we go to an airport and you meet rock stars and you know who they are and they're psyched to see you. Like, how does this always happen to you? And they're like, how did you know that he was an assistant captain? Like, well, I read it in Sports Illustrated. But most of all, I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan. And let's face it, the golf and Iron Maiden crowd don't always mix. There's not always a whole lot of overlap between the two.
But having said that, Nicko is a huge golf enthusiast.
Huge. And that's part of why he moved to Miami, to South Florida, so he could play golf all the time. Yeah.
In fact, I think there's definitely some footage in that Flight 666 where he's got his own flight case with his clubs and the custom bag and everything. And I think it's one of those, every time he has a day off, I think it's him and Dave.
Dave Murray's also a big golfer. Yeah.
They play a lot of golf together.
And then Adrian's a big tennis player. And, they all have their things to do on the road to kind of keep them sane.
Right.
And Nicko also eventually quit drinking. I think, he saw himself in an interview after he knew he'd had a couple, maybe than he should have. He said, you know what, I'm just going to quit. And he stopped. He just kind of said, nope, that's it. But Nicko, he's older than the other guys. He goes back a while. He was 21 when we were born, So in the 60s, he's out gigging out. He may not have been in any huge bands, but in the 60s, he's out doing Beatles covers and Stones covers and stuff like that. He was in a band called The Axe in 1969. And then in 71, he was playing with this guy named Billy Day. And Billy Day introduced him to Dick Asher, the head of CBS Records, as Nicko while he was kind of loaded or whatever. And he decided he liked it. It sounds English. And I think I'll keep that. So then he's kind of through the 70s, he kind of gigs around. He was on a single by the Cockrell Chorus, I guess. But he also played on a self-titled album by guitarist Gordon Giltrap in 1973. Of course, Gordon Giltrap is a good friend of Oliver Wakeman and a collaborator of Oliver Wakeman, who has been on our show a couple times and is a friend of our show. So we're kind of tying it all back together here. What's really interesting is that Giltrap released an album in 1978 called Fear of the Dark.
A little foreshadowing there.
Yes. And it's even a somewhat similar writing to the Giltrap logo, apparently. But there's nobody sued or anybody or anything. It's all good. And then he eventually played with Pat Travers for a while in the 70s. Pat has had a lot of people in and out of his band. And then he was in the French band Trust. Now, you've heard of Trust. Do you know where you've heard of Trust?
Let's go with no.
Well, there were two bands on the heavy metal soundtrack that you didn't know.
Okay.
And one was Riggs, which is Keith Riggs, who I think started in Memphis. And then, by the way, he eventually played with Pat Travers. Because it all comes back together. No, I'm sorry, it's Jerry Riggs. Jerry Riggs, he did start in Knoxville, Memphis, whatever. And then he eventually played with Pat Travers down the road. But the other band you'd never heard of was Trust. And the reason is because they're a French hard rock band. And there's no such thing as a French hard rock.
I was going to say, I don't think those two things went together, but okay.
There's barely such thing as a French rock and roll band, let alone like a hard rock band. But Trust was one. And they had been around for a little while. I mean, they started in 77. They're also kind of like a political band. And the themes of their songs would be like, fighting against, the society that basically keeps you down and chews you up and spits you out. And, you work all your life just so you can retire. Why not just retire now, kind of thing. But I guess when they would translate their themes in French to English, it didn't always translate one-to-one. It didn't always make sense. And I think they had an example here, which I wasn't going to read because he wasn't in the band that long, but it was just funny to me. Yeah, the antisocial song was, in French, it's like you spend your lifetime working to pay for your own tombstone. You hide your face behind the newspaper. You walk like a robot in the subway corridors. Nobody cares about your presence. It's up to you to make the first step. Okay, so it's like, yeah, don't just be a drone.
Sure.
Don't just accept your fate. Get out and do something different. But the English version goes, you're on a train ride to no importance. You're in love with hell existence. Money is all that you desire. Why don't you pack it in and retire? Okay, yeah, that's not the same thing.
Doesn't pack the same punch there.
I don't know. And they said some punk guy, Jimmy Persy of English punk band Sham 69, helped them with the lyrics, but I don't know how much it really helped them. If that's what came out of it.
Orders, but I'm too busy looking over my shoulders. My consent keeps people around me, burning without care, my only enemy. Only enemy. I'm not upset by the way I am. To tell you the truth, I don't give a damn. The only answer is to lie, help the fool and make him cry.
But anyway, Trust did okay in Europe, and being on the heavy metal soundtrack is how I know about Trust. But they did fine in Europe, and they opened for Iron Maiden quite a bit. And so Nicko got to know Rod Smallwood and got to know Bruce and the boys in the band and everything. And so when Clive Burr had become a bit of a problem to himself and to the band, well, they asked him to McBrain to come in and do it. And because they hadn't announced that Burr had left yet, his first appearance with Iron Maiden on German TV was with the Eddie mask on.
I was going to say, I thought he played Eddie for a while just because he was hanging around with the band. They loved him as a good guy. Yeah. And that was his first official gig in the band, was as the man behind the mask.
Look, he comes in, he makes friends with Harry, and then what album's on it? Well, he starts with Peace of Mind. Okay, yeah, it's pretty good. Straight into Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son. I mean, we were
talking about that when we reviewed Peace of Mind. The first song you ever heard him on was Where Eagles Dare.
Where Eagles Dare, yeah.
And that drum intro would make you say, oh man, Clive is the guy to go with. I'll never turn away from, hey, wait a minute, this is pretty good. I think this guy might be even better.
That's right, yeah. And so once he was in, he never left. He never left. 42 straight years of Maiden, going to high heights. And in the 90s, hey, they kind of went down a little bit there, right? And I saw him in a club in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I did.
To go from playing arenas to playing clubs is for a band that had been around at that time, 20 something years. Yeah. But
that happens. That happens.
Yeah.
And then once Bruce and Adrian came back, honestly, they started coming back to the top, and they have just gone higher and higher and higher. Their latest albums are some of the best they've ever made.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so stop right there. Stop right there for a minute. That's an interesting conundrum. So you get this new dude in the band, and let's just say he's just awesome.
Yeah.
What do you do about new music?
Well, according to these announcements they've made, if they make new records, that's for Nicko. That's Nicko's job.
Okay. But to me, these are like when your parents get divorced and they tell you, oh, everything's going to be the same. I don't know. I mean, personally, I would like it that way. You kind of want him to still be part of the band, but at the same time, it's like, if we've got this dude who's now the drummer, can you say to him, yeah, sit this out. You're just the road guy. I mean, I know he can't say, well, screw you, I'm leaving. I get that. But, you got to have him as part of the band also.
Well, the thing is, in this day and age, it happens more and more that, yes, I'm still in the band and I still own a piece of the band.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a member, but I'm not touring. David Page from Toto comes to mind. He's still technically in the band, owner of the band. He does not tour.
What's his name from Foreigner? Mick Jones. He's technically still in the band, but I mean, he's
right.
Once in a while, you'll see him.
Glenn Tipton is technically still in Judas Priest.
Yeah.
I took the Wolf Club to see America last summer. This year, Jerry wasn't there. Like, there's only two guys in America, and one of them quit. Well, he didn't quit. He just retired from the road. I'm like, great. And everybody wants that new America album that will surely be coming out in 2025 or 26. Nobody wants to see the guy who wrote and sang the songs sing them live on stage, right? But yeah, I mean, that's just something that as these guys get older, for legal and financial reasons, they are still members of the band.
Right.
But because they just cannot play live or live on the road like that anymore, they have to stop that portion. And so the guy who plays live gets a check for every show, but the guy who doesn't still gets stuff like album sales and t-shirts and stuff like that. So I don't know exactly what the arrangement is, and it doesn't really matter. But Harry, he cannot let any grass grow under his feet. They've got all these dates lined up for Iron Maiden. It's been, next year it'll be 4 years since he did a British Lion album. Well, 5 years and then maybe 4 years since Senjutsu. Does that sound? It's at least close.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And he's not a legacy guy. He will never be, we'll just play the catalog stuff and that's fine. Always wants to put out new music.
No, exactly. And next year's tour, and I'm sure next year's tour will run into 2026 as well, because I don't think there's any American dates next year. So they'll do like Europe in 2025, and then they'll do some of the rest of the world in 2026. And then they want to put to bed some of those older songs.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, they have done a lot of great music in the last 25 years since they all got back together. And though Nicko's been a big part of that, he can still be a part of that in the studio. It's just he's not going to be on the road anymore. And look, I don't know any band who has a 72-year-old drummer who plays this kind of music. I mean, Black Sabbath didn't have Bill Ward at the end of their farewell tour because he's too old to play a Black Sabbath show. Okay, you have to have somebody younger on the drums. You just have to.
I mean, the fact that he made it this far is pretty remarkable.
It is. And he talked a little bit about his stroke, I mean, like going to the hospital and how the people just took the most amazing care of him and how it was a little risky as far as we're going to put you on this medicine, but there's a 8% chance you're going to die, but there's a 92% chance that this is going to help you in a huge way and you can bounce right back.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, give it to me. Let's go. I'm not quitting. I'm going to try to do this. And, to his credit, he did. But having a stroke in January and then having to rev up for Iron Maiden in May when his feet aren't reacting to him, his hands aren't reacting to him right.
Yeah.
Brian has been sitting there on the sideline for a while. Between Smallwood and Steve Harris, they weren't going to be like, oh yeah, we got a 71-year-old drummer who's had a stroke a few months ago. No, we don't need to have a backup.
You're right. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna cut you a check, and you're gonna stand on the side, and we won't need you for anything. But if we do, we need you to jump in there because yeah, you can't cancel those shows.
Which is, I think, what what Vinny Appice was doing on Heaven and Hell. I could be wrong about this, but I think there was a story because Bill Ward's drinking was getting bad, and once Ozzy was gone, now he's really kind of bummed. So on Heaven and Hell, they're basically paying Vinny some huge amount to just sit on the sideline. So in case Bill falls over or throws a fit or just can't do it, Vinny can walk right in and they can still get paid.
Yeah.
And it's not like that's the only time in rock and roll this has ever happened. Savvy management companies know if you've got someone, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a drinking or drug issue, if someone might not make it, maybe they're not there on the road because like right next to them, because that's going to cause issues, but they've got their phone on them.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Just wait in the hotel lobby. We'll let you know.
So although I'm sad to see Nicko go. I'm happy that he is still alive. I'm happy he didn't just fall apart and then we knew it was too late.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely happy I got to see him, and seeing that footage from the show the other night where he got to say goodbye on his, I mean, probably wasn't his terms. I mean, I kind of feel like if he could go, he'd go forever. But I mean, at some point in time, you don't want to see him just keel over halfway, or have him be replaced halfway through a tour and that you just never hear from him again. He got to say goodbye. That was huge.
Huge. And to do those huge shows. It's not like he said goodbye in a club of 1,200 people.
Right.
90,000 people over 2 nights. I mean, that's fantastic. He's 72. I assume he has some good money from what it sounds like. He's still going to be sponsored by some of his people. He still has his rib shack in South Florida. And Rod Smallwood said he'd still be doing stuff within Iron Maiden. And I'm kind of hopeful that in 2025, we get a new Iron Maiden album. Although I bet we don't, because basically guaranteed we're going to play this old stuff.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to have a new record to compete with that.
Well, exactly. If you're not going to play it, then don't release it. That wouldn't make sense. Maybe 2026. Who knows? Maybe 2027. I admire the way Rod Smallwood has managed this band forever. No one is a bigger part of the band and more key to their success than Rod is. And it's great that they plan these things out. We have to get tickets a year in advance to an Iron Maiden show. But how much longer can they really do it? I mean, isn't Harry like 68 now? Bruce is like 66 or 67.
I mean, the fact that Bruce can still go out there and sing at a very high level that many times over the span of these tours is remarkable. Also, the playing the guitar is challenging, but that if the guitar doesn't work, you can go grab another one. If your voice is shot, there's no backup to that.
Especially after like throat cancer, like Bruce.
That too,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. He's 66, Harry's 68. But there's 3 lead guitarists in the band. So if one of them's a little down, the other 2 can run the show. They did it fine for about 25 years, right?
Yeah.
You don't always have to have 3 guitar players. They're all more than capable. But you have to have Harry. You have to have Steve Harris galloping along on his bass. You have to have Bruce Dickinson. And you have to have a drummer who's up to the task. And I think everyone is rooting for Simon Dawson. Did you know that Nicko actually played on the the first Smith-Kotzen record? He was the drummer.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool that all that stuff seems to be completely sanctioned now. The Smith-Kotzen, the Bruce solo stuff, they promote it on their website. They sell merchandise. It's if you want to go do something else on the side, totally cool.
Yeah. Well, because it is so planned out, so far in advance, and like, okay, this is when rehearsals are going to start. These are our dates. This is when you have to start doing press and all that. Then you have time to do side project here, tour here. Harry needs to know so we can go out and do British Lion, right?
Right.
But they're all pretty much the exact same age, all within about 18 months to 2 years or so of each other, except Nicko. Nicko was older. I mean, he's 6 years older than Bruce. He's 4 years older than Harry, and he's 4 or 5 years older than the rest of the guys in the band. So if your drummer's your oldest and you're in a heavy metal band, you're going to get a new drummer at some point. It's just going to happen.
Right.
So we got to wish the best to Simon Dawson. And, well, we'll be critiquing him because we are going to see them play in Stockholm next summer.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to perhaps maybe Nicko will take on more of a face of the band role. Like maybe he'll do like publicity stuff or, like fan interaction, something like that would be kind of cool.
Well, he should have a podcast. We should talk to Christian Swain about getting Nicko his own podcast
Lord.
on Pantheon. How great would that be? And actually, I think he was toyed with being a boxer for a while, and everybody assumes that's how he got his nose smashed in. But it's not. I mean, it's something that happened when he was a kid, and he just never got it fixed. And so I'm like, well, good for you. He kind of just lives with it. It's kind of part of his personality, I would say.
Oh yeah. It's his whole persona, right? But I mean, 42 years on the road, he's got some stories to tell.
Yeah, and that's just with Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
I mean, he played live out in the 60s. He played all throughout the 70s. He didn't join Iron Maiden until 1982. So he's got like 60 years just about of this rock and roll life back when it was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
He should probably write a book, but I feel like a documentary because now we can capture a lot of this. And he's such a character that just reading his words is not the same as like hearing it from Nicko himself, That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a fight at school. Broke his nose. He just never fixed it. That's just who he is.
This is Uncle Steve from Uncle Steve's Iron Maiden Zone, and you are listening to The Wolf and Action Jackson on the Ugly American Werewolf in London podcast right now.
And there's a lot of great stories of him all the time. There was a time like in America, probably on the Power Slave tour, just because they did so many of them. There's a time without drums where he ran back and jumped in the pool for a while.
Correct. Yes, during the bass solo. Yeah,
he had to cool off,
Right.
And then there was the B-side, the famous B-side of Harry just bitching him out.
You can't treat him like that. He comes up to me. He's yelling at me when I'm trying to play the drums. Who's this guy think he is?
Great mission from Airy.
There we go. Yes. Yeah.
I'm playing a drum solo, and the guy's standing a yard to 2 yards behind my drum line. What? What? By the time I got that far, I'd fucking totally fucked. Because I'm not paying attention to my gig, I'm paying attention to what he's trying to tell me.
You would have noticed.
I noticed.
I completely understand it.
Fuck me right up.
But he was only doing what I told him to do.
Oh, man.
And you, okay, so you and I both got to see Bruce Dickinson live on his speaking tour.
Correct.
And at the end, he took questions, in quotation marks, from the band. And he was just using something because he wanted to tell a story of Nicko and pretend to be Nicko for a while. What's all this then?
He presses his nose in. What's all this then? In the middle eight. What's that meal weight? He's just, and you're right. We talked about it. Like someone's going to have a question that he doesn't really want to answer, but it'll have some kind of, what's it like drumming with Nicko McBrain? Well, let me tell you, Nicko McBrain. But sometimes it'll be like, well, of all the characters you met on the road, who's the biggest one? Well, that would have to be Mr. Nicko McBrain. He was always looking to work in a Nicko story. You remember in the 12 Wasted Years video, which, God, it seems so old now because Maiden's about to celebrate their 50th year. Now, it's only been 45 years since the release of the original Iron Maiden record in 2025. But Harry started rolling with Iron Maiden in like 1975. He created it, and then they worked their way up, did the Ruskin Arms and all that, gigged out everywhere. And there was a story that there was another band called Iron Maiden running around at the time, but they hadn't registered it with the British authorities. So Harry, as soon as he learned that, he ran out and registered it, and thank God he did, because it's an amazing name. And the lore of Iron Maiden with Eddie and Derek Riggs and all of their album covers makes Iron Maiden such a special band, not just in heavy metal, but in all of rock and roll. And the fact that they back it up with these incredible live shows, but it's on the backbone of the rhythm section, which is Steve Harris, and for the longest time has been Nicko McBrain. Now, all due respect to Clive Burr, who Nicko replaced, Clive was a hell of a drummer. I think his extracurricular stuff was starting to affect him and his attitude was starting to hurt him with the band more than his ability to play. But I remember from the 12 Wasted Years, once they got him in, Bruce was like, it's like having a new toy, you know. Can he do this? Yes, he can. Can he do this? Yes. Well, can he do this, and this? He can too.
Yeah, I mean, much in the way like you loved Iron Maiden. It was a great record. You loved Killers. That was great. We've got a new guy. Well, oh boy. Oh, this is a lot better.
You're changing the singer? Oh, you're crazy.
yeah,
I don't want to hear.
yeah.
Wait, what? Is this even the same band? This is so awesome.
This got a lot better. And I can imagine when both Paul and Clive heard the respective records, they went, oh boy, I don't think I'm getting that job back.
Nah, Adrian? That's a girl's name. No, I'm a Dennis Stratton fan, man. Oh, wait, this guy's awesome. I mean, that was the thing about Iron Maiden, except with maybe Blaze. Every time that somebody left, they got a huge upgrade. Stratton leaves, they get Adrian Smith, who can not only play better, but he can actually sing, and he's a heck of a songwriter.
Right.
Clive leads. I'm sorry.
Paul leaves.
Paul Di'Anno leaves. You
Or
get
is
Bruce
dismissed.
Dickinson.
Yeah.
One of the biggest upgrades in the history, one of the biggest free agent pickups in the history of ever. Then Clive leaves, they get Nicko. And then that's the classic band that made Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Live After Death, Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, Made in England. That was the sweetest run that Iron Maiden ever did. And then Adrian said, okay, I got to get more of my songs on the album. He splits. They bring in Yannick Gers. I won't say he was an upgrade to Adrian, but he was also a songwriter and also a heck of a good guitar player. And by the way, after Clive Burr was dismissed from Iron Maiden, he played in a little band called Trust from France.
Well, they needed a drummer.
You can't make this stuff up, folks. Before too long, one of them's going to have played in Asia. I know it. I'm just waiting for the final tie-in here somewhere. But no, in all seriousness, look, Nicko McBrain, as a character of rock and roll, I think you're a true spirit. You're one of a kind. And I'm glad that we got to enjoy you play live and on those records all those years. I am curious to see how Brian works out and what's next, because I know what to expect from Iron Maiden show. I've seen him on a bunch of different tours, couple different lineups. You've seen them now live too. You know what it's supposed to be.
Right.
We'll find out next summer if he can cut it.
I mean, yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. I would actually love to see some like behind the scenes, like practice rehearsal stuff, just to get everybody used to it. Just because I love to hear him play, that would be great. I can't imagine he wouldn't. I mean, it's bittersweet, but I'm glad that they're not deciding, well, let's just hang it up. There were some posts on the socials about how, oh, these guys are old, they should hang it up. And then the next post is, are you insane? Yeah. They still put on the greatest shows ever. Shut it.
It's killer. I mean, it's not like, okay, you know what, I saw them 10 years ago and they were better then. No, man, I'm telling you, it is awesome. They're all having fun. And look, don't ever tell Harry what to do. Okay? Don't ever tell Harry what to do. You want to get smacked in the mouth. Put a video of yourself and post your address. What's going to happen is Steve Harris is going to show up to your house and punch you in the face.
He is originally a soccer hooligan, so don't ever forget that.
Well, plus he's got the greatest work ethic, better than Mick Jagger's. I'm telling you, the man is non-stop. And that's why they've sold out 2025 and are planning what they're doing in 2026. So go get your rest, Nicko. You've earned it. Maybe we'll see you at the Rib Shack. But you're welcome to come on this show anytime to talk about anything you want.
Just tell some stories.
It's hard to say goodbye to the great Nicko McBrain of Iron Maiden, a drumming legend, one of the all-time legendary bands, and quite a character, quite a fun guy. We'll certainly miss his presence and his personality in the Maiden mix, although he'll still play some kind of role, I'm sure. Maiden aren't the kind of people to just write folks off. Once you're in the family, you're in. You can see by the way they treated Paul Di'Anno at the end of his life. helped take care of some of his medical bills. They helped do a benefit for Clive Burr when he had MS. They're not writing Nicko off. He'll still be around in some capacity. And I hope he continues to tell his stories because he's got so many of them and he's got a great storytelling style. And we wish him only the best. And we're really pulling for Simon Dawson. I know I might have called you Brian a couple times during the show, Simon. That's my bad. Still getting used to who you are, but I can't wait to see how you do in the band. And I know there's a lot of pressure and expectation there, but we're sure you're going to be up to it. A lot of people are really looking forward to this next tour. The last tour was such a huge success, not only going over the new stuff on Shinjitsu, which was such a good album, but hitting the Somewhere in Time catalog pretty hard too. Just a great set list, a great stage show. Jax and I had a blast in Europe, and we're going to do it again next summer. Brian's going to be behind the sticks, and we'll definitely be here to give you a report on how it goes. And we want to know, folks, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? Hey, email us and let us know. It's uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can let us know the bands, the albums, the tours, the DVDs, the books, the rock properties you want to hear us talk about here on the show. Please make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The downloads are the lifeblood of our growing the show. And if you're thinking about it, guys, please go out and give us a 5-star review. It means the world to us. It helps us find more rock and rollers like you. And if you send it to us or we get word of it, we may just read it on an episode. Thanks as always to Pantheon Podcast for making us part of the family. And thanks to our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, who's based in the UK and has a ton of amazing Iron Maiden stuff. Use the code UGLY at checkout. You can save 10% off one entire order of Maiden goodies. That's it for this week. Coming towards the end of the year here, folks. Do we have any more magic up our sleeves? Do we have any more fun in store for you? Well, I guess you're just going to have to tune in to find out. We're definitely going to do a yearly wrap-up like we always do at some point. Whether that's next week or the week after, you'll have to stay tuned to find out. And until next time, to all you rockers all around the world, be cool and keep doing what you do to keep rock alive.